Hello everyone, and welcome to Geo Vision. Today, I'd like to share my analysis of one of the most pressing economic issues of our time, the tariff war between the United States and China. I'm going to take you on a factual and in-depth journey through the latest developments that show an escalation like we've never seen before. This conflict is not just about numbers or tax rates. It reflects deep geopolitical tensions. It's a subject that really captivates me, and I believe it affects us all, whether it's in our everyday lives or on a global scale. In this video, I'm drawing on three well-structured recent articles from renowned sources: The Washington Post, The Independent, and Business Today. Each article brings a different and complementary perspective, from analyzing the tariff escalations to exploring strategic concessions, and even employing historical references in its narrative. Before we dive into the details of this escalation, let me set the stage. Since 2018, we have witnessed a growing tension in the trade relationship between the United States and China. This confrontation began with disputes over trade practices and quickly transformed into a genuine economic war. As someone who closely follows economic news, I find it fascinating to see how tariff decisions not only affect bilateral relations but also the overall stability of the global economy. I clearly remember the early days when we first started talking about decoupling, a term many experts use to suggest that economic exchanges between these two giants could soon unravel. Cooperation, once synonymous with shared prosperity thanks to intense trade, now starts to resemble an economic arms race, with each side trying to tip the balance in its favor. Today, I'm going to explain how the recent tariff hikes and cascading reactions might radically reshape the global economic landscape. Tariff escalation and reactions. Now, let me get into the heart of the matter by discussing insights from a recent article in The Washington Post. I found this article to perfectly illustrate the current escalation in the trade war. According to the article, the situation has reached a critical level. Not only have U.S. tariffs been increased to 145%, but China has also retaliated by imposing tariffs of up to 125% on U.S. products. These numbers, which I never imagined witnessing in modern times, really demonstrate how extreme economic pressure tactics can become. Personally, I find this escalation quite concerning. When world leaders refuse to back down and every move seems designed to push the other to the edge, it makes you wonder about the long-term consequences. The article highlights the possibility of a complete decoupling of the US and Chinese economies. Just imagine for a moment what that would mean for global supply chains. Companies that are hyper-connected today might suddenly have to regain their independence at a breakneck pace. We're talking about a tremendous risk to global economic stability, and the experts are not hiding their worries. One passage that really struck me was when Jude Blanchett from the RAND Corporation's China Research Center pointed out that we have now moved past mere tariff debates, entering a phase of real economic mistrust. When he mentions decoupling, I'm reminded that this concept isn't just theoretical. It could turn into a harsh reality for millions of jobs and for overall global growth. We're talking about the potential erosion of economic ties that have so far acted as a stabilizing force in international relations. Think about it. If investments and trade start drying up, that means fewer jobs and a potential spike in unemployment, both in the United States and China. Moreover, this article helped me grasp the sheer complexity of the game being played by Trump and Xi. The near-total breakdown of communication between the two camps, evident from the abrupt cutoff of dialogue channels, increases the tension even further. This communication gap leaves little room for negotiation, which in turn raises the risk of the conflict spilling over into other areas, such as security issues like the situation in Taiwan. For me, this scenario perfectly illustrates the paradox of coercive economic strategies. Trying to force concessions through pressure can ultimately undermine global stability and jeopardize international relations that had previously maintained a fragile equilibrium. Second, strategic concessions and hopes for an agreement. Now, let's move on to another angle presented by The Independent. Here, attention is focused on Trump's recent decision to exempt certain technological products, such as smartphones, laptops, and chips, from the new tariffs. So, why was this decision made? And more importantly, what does it signify in the broader context of this trade war? To me, this maneuver appears as a strategic double play. On the one hand, it helps to ease some of the market panic, particularly among major US tech companies like Apple and Samsung. These companies were hit hard when the massive tariffs were announced, and by exempting these critical products, their revenue, and by extension their financial stability, is largely preserved. I've often wondered whether such a concession could be the prelude to an easing in tariff strategy, or at least a sign that the US wants to protect certain strategic sectors of its economy. Moreover, this article shines a light on the intense behind-the-scenes negotiations, especially with the United Kingdom. The prospect of a US-UK trade agreement.
The US Vice President J.D. Vance has raised hopes of a UK-US trade deal. Mr. Vance said that the Trump administration wanted an agreement that would serve the best interest of both countries.
Targeted to be concluded within a short 90-day window for over 90 deals, strikes me as a ray of hope in this tense environment. In my view, this isn't just a protective economic measure. It's also an element of economic diplomacy that could potentially unite a common front to counter China's pressures. I really appreciate the live aspect of this article. Because these updates are reported in real time, there's a palpable sense of immediacy, and I feel that energy as well. It reminds me just how critical it is today to stay informed about economic and trade developments, given how these political decisions directly impact our lives, whether it's the technology we use every day or the stability of the job market in our industries. Additionally, I find it interesting that this tariff decision is built not solely on direct economic interests, but also on geopolitical considerations. By exempting these key technological products, the U.S. government is sending a strong signal to its trading partners, showing that even under pressure from China, it remains willing to negotiate and compromise. This creates a more nuanced narrative, where the conflict isn't merely a war of numbers, but a strategic contest where every concession counts. Third, rhetoric and historical echoes. Finally, I want to touch on an additional dimension highlighted in the Business Today article. Here, the focus is on the use of a historical reference, a quote from Ronald Reagan, to criticize Trump's tariff logic. The quote, which warned that the surest way to throw Americans out of work is to start a trade war, is repurposed by China to underscore the perceived absurdity of Trump's strategy. Personally, I find this historical reference very powerful. It shows how the past can be invoked to shed light on present decisions. I've always been fascinated by the way history repeats itself and how leaders can use lessons from the past to justify their actions. In this case, China is using Reagan's words to argue that the American tariff policy risks not only hurting American workers but also creating an unstable, conflict-prone economic environment. The article also provides some striking numbers. We see U.S. tariffs escalating from 10% to an astounding 104%.
Right now, China is paying a 104% tariff. Think of it, 104%.
And now, reaching 145% for targeted products. In contrast, China has raised its own tariff rates to 125%. When you look at these figures closely, they reveal an escalation that goes far beyond a mere economic adjustment. Each additional percentage point carries consequences for millions of jobs and the competitiveness of industries around the world. Reflecting on these numbers, I can't help but think about the very tangible impact on the everyday citizen. For example, if we consider the tech sector, where companies like Apple are already under severe pressure, one can easily imagine rising consumer prices and a reduction in purchasing power. These are issues that affect all of us and should drive our governments to rethink strategies, lest we spiral into a vicious cycle of retaliatory measures. What makes this analysis even more compelling is the rhetorical and media dimension it brings. The way international media reports these events significantly shapes our perception of the conflict. In a world where information flows at breakneck speed, it becomes crucial to sift through the rhetoric and focus on the facts. Personally, I firmly believe in maintaining a critical yet balanced approach. As citizens, we need to understand the nuances of these issues without getting swept up by sensationalism that might distort the reality of the situation. Fourth, consequences and future scenarios. Now, I'd like to invite you to think with me about what these developments mean for the future. Beyond the numbers and political statements, we must consider what scenarios might unfold in the coming months and years. First of all, there is a real risk of a complete decoupling of the US and Chinese economies. Just imagine a world where globally integrated supply chains start to fracture. This would mean a significant reduction in economic efficiency, rising production costs, and inevitably a slowdown in growth. For industries that depend on a seamless supply of electronic components, raw materials, or manufactured goods, this risk translates directly into huge financial losses and the potential for massive job cuts. Secondly, there's the issue of international alliances. Trump's attempt to secure a trade deal with the United Kingdom and potentially other partners within a rapid 90-day window is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can be seen as an effort to build a unified front against China's influence. On the other, it exposes the limitations of economic diplomacy under extreme pressure. I've always believed that managing a trade conflict of this magnitude requires different powers to work together, rather than engage in a numerical war that benefits no one in the end. When I examine these issues, I inevitably think of the average citizen, of all of us affected by decisions made on a grand scale. For instance, the tariff exemptions on products like smartphones and laptops, although they might seem like minor gestures, have a direct effect on our purchasing power and cost of living. Imagine if prices surged because global supply chains were disrupted by protectionist measures. This is a reality that could affect us whether we're in the United States, Europe, or Asia. Experts already predict that if the situation worsens, we might see an increase in the cost of consumer goods, a decline in industrial productivity, and growing instability in financial markets. I'd like to remind you that, according to some recent forecasts, China's trade surplus, which reached nearly $1 trillion, could be heavily impacted if trade volumes were to drop dramatically. Similarly, the loss in market value for major tech companies like Apple isn't just an isolated statistic. It's a sign of an economy under strain. Domestically, these tariff changes could have major repercussions. The risk of job losses in strategic sectors, rising unemployment, and overall economic uncertainty are deeply concerning. As both a consumer and a citizen, I feel it's essential that we remain vigilant and support policies that promote international cooperation rather than systematic confrontation. In conclusion, what I take away from all of this is that we are at a pivotal crossroads for the global economy. I truly believe it's vital for us, as citizens, to stay informed and to participate actively, whether through our voices or our actions, in advocating for peaceful and cooperative solutions. So, I encourage you, dear viewers, to view these issues not merely as cold statistics or dry figures, but as challenges that directly affect all of us. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, a student, or simply a concerned citizen, these economic dynamics play a crucial role in our daily lives. Take the time to follow the news, question political decisions, and engage in public debate. Together, by staying informed and responsible, we can influence the direction our governments take. Thank you for taking the time to join me in this detailed analysis. I hope this video has helped you better understand the current stakes and the importance of these economic decisions for our society's future. Please leave your comments below, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this critical topic. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful analyses very soon.